Here we are again. It's cold, wind's blowing, there's lots of noises everywhere, including the birds. So what I want to talk about is the politicisation of a virus. That's right, COVID-19. Seems a funny word, doesn't it? The politicisation of a virus. Obviously you can politicise the response to a virus, you can politicise the way to tackle a virus, tackle the pandemic, but I'm talking about something much wider which has much more profound implications, especially in the Western world, because it seems to be a Western phenomenon more than something which has gripped the imagination of the rest of the world. Now, as we know, COVID-19 appeared at the end of 2019 in Wuhan in China, and obviously there's a debate about where it originated from. Most of the evidence points to animal-human transmission, although the United States is holding an investigation into whether it's leaked out of a lab in Wuhan. But that's not the issue. The issue is how's the world responded, and how's the world responding, and how's the Western world responding, and how has Australia responded. And we find something really fascinating as far as the response is concerned. The fact, for the first time in human history, there are significant sections of the population in the Western world who are refusing to access treatments which would not only improve their lives but reduce mortality. Treatments that would reduce mortality. This is the dilemma we are currently facing. So what am I talking about? Let's put it in plain English. In plain English, there are people in the Western world, especially the United States, especially in the conservative heartland of the United States, and in some sections of the Australian society, who, one, don't believe COVID-19 exists. That's right. Despite the millions of deaths. There are people in the Western world, especially the United States, in the more conservative regions, who are not interested in social distancing, mask wearing, or quarantining. And there are people in the United States, mainly in the conservative regions, who are not willing to avail themselves of a vaccination, not because of vaccine hesitancy, which is based on people's fears of side effects, whether they're warranted or those fears are warranted or not, but a vaccine hesitancy which is based on the fact that their political organisations that they are acquainted with don't want them to be vaccinated. Now, how's this occurred? This is the 21st century, instant communication, satellites in the sky, private billionaires going up into space, DNA analysis, and the list goes on and on. How has this occurred in the 21st century? How has this situation occurred where people are not willing to avail themselves of treatments that are available because of political considerations? Now, obviously, historically, the way different societies have dealt with pandemics has been interesting, to say the least. Historically, before the advent of vaccinations and treatments, people basically relied on quarantine to survive. And after the deaths of 10%, 20%, 30%, even 50% of the population during the bubonic plague, herd immunity would occur and life would go on. But there was a huge cost to the fact that the only way they had to deal with the situation was quarantine. And let's not forget, although viruses are colourblind, they don't care what colour you are and what nation state you're in and what language you speak, they do tend to have a more profound impact on people who live together in densely populated regions, who live in urban centres, who through poverty are not able to quarantine because they need to continue to earn a living because there's no such a social security system. During the height of the bubonic plague, King Charles escaped to Oxford, set an iron ring around Oxford with his personal guard, and most of his royal, in inverted commas, household survived. While the people of London, who were not able to leave London because they didn't have country estates, like the nobility, suffered an extraordinary price. That's right, they suffered an extraordinary price, personally and as a community, because of the bubonic plague. Shift forward to the 21st century. We now have a more scientific approach. We don't believe in the concept of miasma, that people who live in low-lying areas are more likely to get sick because they live in low-lying areas. So the poor were living in low-lying areas and the rich lived on top of hills. You know, we accept that there are viruses and bacteria, although we can't see them. We accept they're there. And through mass vaccination programs in the past, we've been able to curtail the worst excesses of these viruses and bacteria. Things like polio and smallpox, typhoid, cholera, and the list goes on and on. Although we see outbreaks in various parts of the world, we're not in such a fortunate position. So what's different in the 21st century? What's different today that up to 30% of the American population refuse to socially distance, refuse to wear masks, refuse to be vaccinated, and see this as a badge of honour? They see this as their political duty. How can this occur in the 21st century when treatments are freely available, irrespective of who you are, where you live, whether you're a refugee, asylum seeker, whether you're rich or poor? The vaccination is there, and we are seeing people from all social classes, all economic classes, in the conservative heartland refusing to take up vaccination because of a political decision. To a lesser degree, we've seen the same thing occurring in Australia, but the main reason for vaccine hesitancy in Australia has not been the politicisation of the pandemic, but it's been due to the fact that the vaccine rollout has been botched. There's been some side effects, although minor, from one of the vaccinations, AstraZeneca, and people are a little bit hesitant. But they're hesitant for medical reasons, not for political reasons, because we haven't seen that political polarisation which has occurred in the United States, which saw the election of Trump and his entourage, and saw the extraordinary support that Trump and his entourage received at the last presidential election and Senate and Congress election last year. Extraordinary support. Extraordinary support. I mean, the win for Biden wasn't as big as you'd like to believe. And even now, when over 600,000 Americans have died, when the disease, the COVID-19, is beginning to ravage the population, even now we are seeing people refuse to socially distance, wear a mask, vaccinate because of political considerations. How can that occur in a 21st century world? How can that occur in a 21st century world? Well, it's occurred for one main reason. Polarisation means the creation of information silos. Now, if you're familiar with silos, You know, it's a good analogy. The fact is, all the information comes from one particular direction. It's propaganda in its most old-fashioned form. It's not propaganda which is fostered on the population by the state, which is frightened of any opposition, any contrary view, as we see in, say, North Korea or parts of China. But it's a self-imposed propaganda where you believe that you have the answers and that you are the only one with the truth. And the truth comes to you on high. And every social media, every conversation you have revolves around misinformation, which is fed to the population in these particular information silos, which people can voluntarily leave, but refuse to leave because it reinforces their prejudices. And that's what we are seeing. We are seeing such extreme polarisation that people are no longer willing to listen to any viewpoint which is contrary to their own. So what we are seeing in the conservative America and certain sections of conservative Australia, which have been fanned and egged on by the Murdoch's battleship in Australia, the Australian, which obviously is also part of the problem in the United States of America, the Murdoch-controlled media, we are seeing this disinformation playing an extremely important role in life in these societies. And this disinformation is having a profound impact on society. Because although 60 to 70% of Americans are fully vaccinated, the 30% that refuse to be vaccinated, that refuse to consider it, that see it as a badge of honour not to be vaccinated, consider it as a badge of honour, political honour, not to wear a mask or to socially distance, we are seeing that not only are they committing voluntary euthanasia as a group, but more importantly, they are beginning to have an impact on the rest of society, ensuring that America can't open up economically, ensuring that deaths will continue. Right, so what we are seeing is the recreation of another Jonestown. I think some people watching this YouTube would be familiar with Jonestown and some wouldn't. Well, what happened is a religious guru in the United States of America took all his followers to Guyana, to a place called Jonestown, which was named after him. And when they came under some pressure from the United States, because they were United States citizens, they had a plan in place to commit mass suicide. And over 700 men, women and children died as a result of the misinformation and the silo-like existence of this isolated group of United States citizens. So what we are seeing now is a magnification of the same phenomenon in the conservative heartland. We are seeing the creation of another Jonestown. We are seeing the creation of another Jonestown through misinformation being fed to people on an industrial scale who refuse to interact with anybody else in their society because they are the ones with the right ideas, they are the ones with the truth. So in the 21st century we are seeing significant proportion of the United States population and significant proportions of Europeans and a smaller but significant proportion of Australians who find themselves in this information silo where all the information comes from the same sources who reinforce people's prejudices and ideas, not just about COVID-19, but about many other issues in society. So this politicisation of COVID-19, the politicisation of pandemic, the fact that people are refusing to access treatment, which in the majority of cases, like 99.9%, will make their lives better, highlights how important it is to obtain information from various sources. Just don't limit yourself to information which is coming from people who agree with your sentiments. What creates the ability for us as human beings and as societies to function and move forward is a contest of ideas, not a contest of ideas which are regulated in a certain direction, as we see in many sovereign nation states around the world, not a contest of ideas as we see in the corporate-owned media, but a contest of ideas which actually looks at a variety of possibilities. And what all these YouTube presentations have been about, and what public interest before corporate interest is all about, is about creating that contest of ideas, is about bringing ideas back into the mainstream that have been shunted aside, which have been ignored, which have been marginalised, which have been ostracised. So to many degrees, what is happening in the United States of America through their information silos, through the voluntary euthanasia of conservative sections of American society, through the creation of Jonestown after Jonestown after Jonestown through misinformation, what we are seeing is a situation in the 21st century which parallels the situation which was occurring in society during the medieval period, where everything was based on belief, nothing was based on fact. So there are lessons to be drawn. And the dilemma is that until these lessons are drawn regarding COVID-19, we will all suffer. Not just those people who refuse to accept vaccination as a way forward, but we will all suffer, because unless about 90% of the population is vaccinated, the chances of achieving herd immunity and protecting the other 10% who refuse to be vaccinated won't occur. So if you have made a decision not to vaccinate yourself, if you think it's a badge of honour not to vaccinate, think again. Because history has shown us that those who refuse to accept what is available to them to make their lives better will find themselves on the wrong side of history.